Time here for the CNOTE, and we got top 5 takeaways from Cowboys OTAs. Could not get reporters in today, but we were yesterday, and a lot of things interesting. Deron Bland got some practice reps at slot corner during the only day the media was able to watch. This is a sensitive topic, isn't it? Because at slot corner, you're going to make significantly less money. Mm-hmm. Is that right? So if I'm Deron Bland, I want nothing to do with that unless you can tell me I'm going to make more money. Like, there's a market inefficiency, I think, with slot receivers, slot corners, and tight ends. You know, and a lot of these guys are making plays just like wide receivers and outside corners.
And I think you could argue that it's probably the toughest spot to play, which is bizarre. And I do think that, you know, Deron Bland certainly has said he'd prefer to play outside. I think that he's shown that he's really good if they've got to kick him inside to play nickel. And they might be in a situation based on healthy bodies and who they have available, they don't have a choice. Like, unless somebody else just steps up, maybe it's Izzy Mukuamu, maybe it's somebody else that ends up emerging for them in that spot, but at least to start the season until you're able to get healthy bodies back, like Diggs, hopefully Carson's good to go, hopefully Ravel's good to go. But, yeah, I mean, he might be the best option. And when teams are moving around to try and get plus matchups for guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, heck, CeeDee Lamb on your own team, Devontae Smith, I mean, the list goes on. Your top receivers, a lot of them are moving into the slot. CeeDee Lamb does his best work out of the slot. A lot of top receivers do these days. So for Deron Bland, having that versatility, I think if I was his agent, I'd argue it makes him even more valuable. But I 100% see his case there. And if you're a coach, like, I don't want an unhappy player. If he wants to play outside, I'd rather let him do that. I just might be in a situation where I don't have a better option.
I kind of feel like that they're going to look more into this Gilmore thing. I don't. To me, there was a lot of moving around yesterday, and a lot of, hey, let's try this, and a lot of, when you're doing that, you need to have some stability, though, at some of the other positions to be able to have a plan. Yeah, sure, we'll see with Carson and Butler and, you know, and those guys, and we'll see how it plays out. But I just kind of have a feeling that maybe the avenue of bringing Gilmore on board brings a veteran guy who gives them some flexibility to say, okay, you're playing on the outside. Now let's worry about how we're going to navigate things on the inside. It sounded like to me that actually that Elam had a really good day,
which is a great sign.
I mean, I didn't, you know,
Two pass breakups.
I wasn't watching practice, so my apologies. But these are just people of eyes that I trust at practice that were saying, "Hey, listen, this guy." We've talked about Elam. We did the scouting report. Better zone player than man player, and all that. He's got size to him and stuff. So hopefully that's a good start for him. But I think that maybe even adding Gilmore might give them a little bit more stability. And then now you can play with the ideas of, okay, we got a guy on the outside. We got another guy on the outside. Let's see what we got with Bland, maybe playing him back more on the inside and seeing how that goes. And maybe getting Carson ready. I mean, Troy Pride was a name that I heard was mentioned yesterday, playing a little in the slot. You know, we'll see with Butler and stuff like that. But they've got these injuries these injuries are a problem. Now, I think they're going to get Ravel back for the start. I mean, like with training camp, start of the season, I think we'll start to see this. It sounds really super positive about him. Diggs, I can't tell you. I can't give you
for midseason.
They're all long, big outside corners.
Has there been anything else on Gilmore since Steven mentioned it, or he was there a month ago?
That's what I'm saying. I'm just throwing it out there as I
like it.
Is if you're watching these practices, and maybe we do, and I talked about like June 1 being a day where there might be some cut downs and stuff, but maybe at June 1 when you get done with these OTAs and mini camps and you're like going, you know what? Let's add one more corner here. Let's add a veteran guy. I wouldn't be surprised if they added this guy.
It feels a lot like last year at defensive tackle. And all of a sudden we're sitting there
kept throwing names at it. Yeah.
And then they're working out, you know, and name the players they brought in last year. It's Linval Joseph, et cetera, right? So, and then they ended up hitting on Carl Lawson. Maybe it is. Maybe Stephon Gilmore. But again, that's an outside guy. You don't have a lot of guys that can play inside.
You had Sanborn and Kenneth Murray at middle linebacker quite a bit. A lot of talk about the quarterback, and Shotty was talking about Joe Milton today with reporters who were not allowed to watch practice. And Brian would, but it's at 1 o'clock now, so it's hard. I think
it's hard for me to get out there. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah,
but on the Milton thing, where the reporter said that Joe was a handful in the meetings because he's just a little bit too eager or whatever. Not necessarily the most team-minded, I think would be kind of the takeaway was the rep coming out of New England. But he said we all reach out to people you trust that have been exposed to the player at college, different programs, friends that have been around him, and you dig in and ask, and you get different opinions, and there's always an outlier, good and bad, with each of them. You try to peel those away, but from the time he's been here, the work ethic's incredible. He's one of the first people in the building, one of the last to leave, and everybody's liking him, and I guess Dak's taking a liking to him, and there's like a mentorship going on now.
Listen, I've got friends at New England, okay, and my guys were telling me, I know there were some media reports that he was a bad guy, selfish guy, and all that. I know Elliott Wolf. I know the general manager for the New England Patriots. Elliott and I are very, very good friends. I asked Elliott Wolf. He goes, Brian, I really didn't want to trade this guy. I really didn't. He goes, he is a good guy. Don't worry about him. He will be just fine. And I said, well, Elliott, there's like media reports. And he goes, don't believe him. We're with the guy every day.
Why doesn't it work there then? Because they have the rookie quarterback and Joe wants a chance to show what he can do?
Yeah, I think it doesn't work there because as a general manager, your coaches are coming in and they're new coaches and maybe they have a guy in mind. Maybe they have a certain way. So now you can't just sit there. And I remember when the whole thing went down with Joe Milton and they were talking about trading him. And I asked Elliott point blank, I said, are you going to trade this guy? And he goes, I don't want to. I don't want to. I think this guy's got a lot of ability. I think he's got a lot of talent. And, but you get a new coaching staff rolling in there, and sometimes they say, you know what, we really don't. We want our guy, or we want somebody that like our guy.
Okay, let me get to this one here because we've talked a lot about win total over under 7.5. Is it a good bet? Is it a bad bet? Which way do you take it? And I would just no bet it. I think there's so many ways this thing could go wrong. But anyway, I saw Warren Sharp did strength of schedule based on Vegas win projections. Okay. And that puts the Cowboys' schedule at 22nd most difficult. So which is the better way of looking at it? Their record from last year or the Vegas win total projection? If Vegas win total projection is better, and these teams that had 14 or 11 wins last year that are just devastating the second half of the schedule really aren't that good. I mean, maybe the strength of schedule component to our win. If it's 22nd, then I will bet the over hard. I think they're heading for 10 or 11 wins if it's the 22nd ranked schedule.
I'm not a big believer in leaning into the strength of schedule stuff. I think there's so much turnover. We just talked about the parity, and that's what the NFL is based on. There's so much change year over year. You get a random team that you didn't think was going to be any good that's good. You get teams that you thought were going to be good that end up stinking and disappointing. Injuries happen. Teams lose their quarterbacks. I don't think just because of preseason you look at a schedule and think, oh my gosh, this is a murderer's row. It doesn't always end up reflecting that way. A game you thought that's a win, that can end up being one of your toughest games. In a game you thought, oh my gosh, that's a guaranteed L, maybe you catch them and their quarterback's out. So you just never know. I think I definitely am going on the over here. I'd be stunned if they're not at least an 8-win team, even if they lost to Dak Prescott personally. But, I mean, it's hard to count on and rely on strength of schedule if that's what you're going to do to bet your over or under.
I mean, I guess the Eagles could be worse. They were so great last year. I don't know if they'll ever be as good as they were in the second half of the season last year.
That one time when they did change out, when they went from a very successful coordinator to first-time coordinator, it didn't work out so well. Had a lot of bad losses along the way. It looks like to me that Vic Fangio that's got a really good handle, and I think they've upgraded a couple of defensive positions too, and they've got their Georgia kids playing well, which they haven't had. 2 years ago, the Georgia kids weren't playing great. Now they're playing great.
We've known this team to beat up on regular season competition, especially the division, where Dak is 33-8 lifetime against the NFC East. I think that's a big part of it changing, and we don't know how good the Giants are. We don't know how good the Commanders are. There are other, X-factor games. How good are the Packers? I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought they were really coming on strong in 2023. How good are the Broncos? They're probably going to make it hard to score. Are they going to be able to score enough to beat you in Denver? Probably. How good's Arizona? I think that's like 3 really important games that could set you at 7 wins or 10 wins, depending on on how they go. Hard Knocks continues to reinvent themselves. They're going to do an NFC East edition. I do like this. All 4 teams. I guess you got camera crews at all 4 spots, and you're just running the juiciest content that they can find throughout the week.
Yeah, they did this with the AFC North last year, and it was a big success. I believe we played some clips, during NFL News Today, during football's finest throughout the football season. So this will be fun. Like I wasn't totally plugged into last year's AFC North version. Lucius, I think you were watching it maybe when it came to Hard Knocks.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. So this, I'm excited about this.
Keep up with all the storylines of the season for that little. You know what? You know, it is right. It is cool because I got to see the rivalry between the Steelers and Baltimore.
I got to really understand that rivalry. So yeah, it's pretty good, sweet.